To the brave men and women who stood up for freedom, who answered the call and fought for our nation, who paid the ultimate price and never came back. To the American soldier, we thank you. To the mothers and fathers who raised a hero, to the brothers and sisters with an empty space, to the sons and daughters who have only memories, to the wives and husbands who bear the void with pride, to all who've lost a soldier they love, no gift could repay your sacrifice. No tribute could match our admiration. No word can contain our gratitude, but still, it deserves to be said. We remember you, we salute you, and we honor you today.
If it's okay with you, we're going to come in a side door this morning. It is family. It's a family table. And as we're talking about families, I just want to make an observation about, start by making an observation about fathers. It's kind of amazing to me as I watch the fathers, the young fathers today. They're so hands-on. It's amazing. They change diapers, they're up during the night, they're feeding their, some of the older women are going, yeah. They're feeding their kids, their infants, and that's what I'm thinking, Eileen, yeah. Pastor Joe's not here this morning, but Pastor Joe had one rule: I don't do diapers. No diapers. So, you're a product of your generation, So fathers, I love it. I love seeing fathers being so involved with their babies and their infants, and again, we're products of our generation. So let's step back from not just when my age group were having babies, but I'm going to step back to my day when I was growing up, and I have a brother. Raise your hand. Some people new may not know. I have a sister. So I have a sister. Raise your hand. Just so that if I say anything that's lying, they'll. So we grew up in the day. So I think you can probably substitute Italian for probably Irish, German, probably a lot of things, right? So we kind of grew up with the dad who was, first of all, we all adored him, and he was an amazing dad, but he was also a product of his generation. And so for all of us, I think we would say our relationship with him when we got older was different than it was when we were little. My relationship with my dad when I was little, how else can I say it? It was kind of like, it was emotionally distant. It was kind of like there was an emotional atmosphere in our home that you don't know it when you're growing up, but looking back, and I've sat and talked to a lot of people over the years too, you're a little afraid. You're afraid of dad, there's a kind of fear there, If dad's walking, if you look out the window and dad's coming home a little early and he's walking down the driveway, your first thought is not, oh goody, we're going to do something great. Dad's home early. Your first thought is, did I feed the dog? And did I get I left the darn dishes in the sink. I mean, that's your first thought. Well, that was my first thought with, as a child growing up. So there was a kind of a fear and a kind of a fear of punishment. I mean, if he came to the bottom of the stairs and said, Linda, my first thought was, oh, he's so happy. He wants to just tell me something I did that's wonderful. You know, it was like, oh, you know, your mind is. So you had this kind of emotional, again, a wonderful man, worked hard for his family, loved us. It was the climate. And it was the climate of that kind of fear. And you just always felt something's wrong. And again, that changed. That changed. But I want us to come now for a minute to this table. And the very first time it was had the original table of that set of guys that spent 3 years with the master. They're now ready to have a Passover meal, and they have no understanding of the momentous occasion they are gathering for. They're totally in the dark about it. And what they really don't understand is that the emotional climate between God and humanity is about ready to totally change. Because you see, in the Old Testament, which that's what they were gathering, that's what they were Jews, Old Testament, it was sacrifices. Once a year, it was a Day of Atonement. It was constantly, get your sacrifices ready, make sure your grain is ready, make sure your animals are prepared to be given, make sure it was the wave offering and the peace offering and the one offering after another. And so you're always thinking about your sin. You're always conscious. Say it with me. Something is wrong. Say it with me. Something is wrong. So you live with the sense that something's just not right. It's always right back here. It's kind of like, did you ever put on a pair of shoes that have ties and you didn't think, you left the house and you're out somewhere and you're walking around and for something, the thing keeps untying all the time, and no matter how many times you tie the thing, it's kind of, you're walking around with this untied lace. It's always there in your mind. It's like, this is what it was like to have a relationship with God. It's that shoelace that's always you're thinking about, because you never had that relationship with, you always felt something was wrong. Okay, so here we are, the table is being instituted. Brothers and sisters, there's an amazing wave going across the body of Christ, I believe, right now in this hour. God is so much wanting to reveal the new covenant to his people. God is so revealing that the church, as his people, us, we're living like we belong in the old covenant. We're not living in the grace and the reality of the new covenant at what God has done for us through Christ. Because you see, Christ was ready to leave. Jesus was leaving this table to go and face all the enemies of all time, Satan himself, and to take your sin and sin for all times and totally have it wiped out completely forever, never to be remembered against us again. That's what the new covenant is. Sins are forgiven, never to be remembered against you again. And you know what? It scandalizes people to say it. Oh, your sins are forgiven, past, present, and future. What? What do you mean, my friend? Because if you live with an Old Testament mentality, you're always still living like you got to keep looking at that shoestring. Because the truth of the matter is, once you come to Christ through Jesus, there's no way you can lose your position. There's no way you lose that open door. There's no way you lose that love and grace and acceptance and that standing that you have with God. And you are made righteous. You know what that means? You are where was always something is wrong. Say it with me. Now everything is right. No, you didn't sound very enthusiastic. Okay, where it used to be something is always wrong, now through the blood of Jesus, everything is right. Okay. The emotional climate between the believer and God is totally changed. Did you ever see the movie? A movie where they had like the typical insecure girl in the date, in the relationship. she's totally insecure in the relationship. Well, I thought you said you were going to call me at 6 o'clock. Well, it's 6:07. Yeah, well, has anything changed? I mean, are we still the same? I mean, you know, the insecure, we have emotional atmospheres around relationships. And as we come to the table now, I just want to ask you, what's your emotional relationship with God this morning? Because one of the gifts of the new covenant is a clean conscience before God. A clean conscience before God. Now you say, well, I don't know that, Linda, I really have that, because, you know, if you had been with me, listen to me. It's yours. Do you take it? See, this blood that we're going to share right now, this blood says this is for a conscience that needs to be cleansed. So we take the blood and say, it isn't really so much it isn't for God, really, it's for me to say, no, wait, Linda, yeah, I know how you feel about what you did, and I know, but that's already been forgiven. That's already, you don't have to go to God and ask him to forgive your sins. If you go to God, now you sit on his lap and say, Papa, I really blew it 2 weeks ago. Wow, I'm really sorry I said those words. And you're sorry. You know, the religious question is, oh, so then you just keep sinning because my sins are forgiven? I know, Paul had that problem all the time with people. Religion will always ask that question. But it's okay, I get it. I asked it too. Of course not. Because part of the new covenant is he's come to live in me. He changed my tastes. I don't really want to sin anymore. But if I do, and I do, I go right to Father. And he reminds me, I'm already forgiven. But you know what, Linda, let's work on that thing in your life that really, that thing that's causing relational issues. Let's work on it. It's different than when I was a kid, and that fear wasn't relationship that was foremost with me and my dad. It was punishment and fear. In the Old Testament, it wasn't relationship for them first and foremost. It was fear and punishment. The new covenant that's gone. The relationship is what's the most important. The relationship is forefront. The relationship of love and favor. Listen, the truth is, as we come to the table now and take it, the truth is, we're stupid if we keep sinning. I mean, like, if I'm an addict and I'm constantly taking in something, you know, a drug or something, of course, yeah, does God forgive me? I mean, that's already taken care of. But he wants to tell me, my daughter, that's silly. You're ruining your body, and there's a consequence you're going to pay. And even though your standing with me isn't changing, you're going to receive consequences for it, and I don't want you to. And I've already paid the price that you're free of that. You understand what I'm saying? We're silly if we sin, but it doesn't change the emotional atmosphere between me and Father. The door is always open. I always have his love and favor. Nothing can separate you today from the love of God that's in Christ Jesus. Father, we thank you for this shed blood that we're just starting to understand. The life is in the blood. So when you see this blood, you see the Son. And when you see the Son, you see me. And I don't understand it, and it's a mystery. But you tell us as often as we get together, we should share this table. And we should remember that you broke your body, you cut us off from Satan, and you shed your blood to free us from our sin. And so, Lord, we give you praise and glory for doing that. Amen. You want to come forward? The ushers are going to minister the Lord's table to you.
Let those words sink in. Lord, we just want those words to sink in, that your goodness is running after us. As we leave this place and we walk out of this place, your goodness, your mercy, and your grace, and the fact that we've taken the table and we can have a clear conscience because we are your sons and daughters. And part of that new covenant, that we don't have to have an old covenant mentality. Lord, help us to see that's why your goodness is running after us as we leave here. That it doesn't matter about our moral rectitude and following all the rules and what religion tells us that we have to do and what we should do and what we need to do. That all we need to do is to rest in the finished work of what you've already accomplished and completed. May we exercise that. May we take what is already ours and not leave it behind. May we run after that. Amen. I would ask all the children and the teachers to make their way out. Are you staying and listening to Dad, or are you leaving? Okay, he's leaving. I'll ask him occasionally on the way to church. I'll say to him, "Are you preaching today or am I preaching today?" He just kind of looks at me like, "Okay, Dad." All right? Well, good morning. It's nice to see you. On this Memorial Day weekend, we are going to be picking back up. If you have not been with us the last few weeks, we are in a series on the life of Joseph from the Old Testament. A very famous character. When you look at the totality, the entirety of the Bible, somebody that people have been well acquainted with, right? We said in the first week there's a Broadway show, about this. This is better. Listen, Hulu, Netflix, whatever other platform is out there, they have nothing on this story that we find in the Bible, in the book of, in the life of Joseph, in the book of Genesis. So we are going to jump back in here, and I want to review first. And by the way, I should say, again, for those people that don't know, the subtitle is When Life Doesn't Go Your Way. All right, because I imagine, did anybody have a situation or a circumstance this week where life didn't go your way? Anything? Some of you are like shaking your head. Yeah, I think the world that we live in, right? Usually you're going to find experiences on not even a weekly basis, a daily basis where life doesn't go your way. Life didn't go my way this morning when I was feeding Nolan, and he spilled his apple juice all over my notes. So they are anointed with his apple juice. What do you do when things like that happen, right? It's all about our perspective. And we started in the first week. Let's just review. In week number 1, a couple of things here, points. We said that Joseph didn't follow his dream, right? It's all about these 2 dreams that he has. And he talked to his brothers and he told them, and we said that he's pretty arrogant about this. He's a spoiled brat, that he really wasn't supposed to be sharing them this way, but he does. And we said that Joseph didn't follow his dream. His dreams followed him because he was following God. And for us as Christians, our job is to follow Jesus, and when we follow Jesus, our dreams follow along. And I think sometimes we can get it backwards. So that was week number 1. And then last week, just to give you the crux and the thesis of the message, I said we were talking about detours. And here Joseph, he had the dreams, right? And we're going slow. I'm not really going fast. I know most preachers, when they're preaching through this story of Joseph, we just like to get to the end. Can we just take our time as we walk and as we talk with Joseph and the other characters that are here? And here is Joseph last week. What happens? We said God is the God of the detour, right? And the point, we look for God in the destination, but what if he is in life's unexpected detours? We left Joseph, where is he last week? He's in a pit. And that wasn't part of the dream. When he had those dreams and the sheaves and your sheaves bow down before mine and the earth, the moon and the stars and everybody's bowing before me. I don't remember anything in the dream about a pit. I don't remember anything about a prison. None of that was really in there. But God does some of his best work in the detours of life. And I said last week too, right? We look at detours as being in the way of our destiny, but that's the only way really to our destiny. The detours that we find along the way, and I love that quote from Edison, right? Things that we've been labeling as coincidences. I said God calls evidence, but Edison really nailed it. Not a Christian either, But coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. How good is that? That we can start labeling situations and circumstances and events that happen in our lives, not as coincidences, but God has been orchestrating things and moving things. And when things don't go our way, that's okay, because his love is still compatible with the worst things that we have ever experienced in this world. And I'm sorry, a lot of pulpits around the world, you don't hear, the message is God's going to do all these great things for you, and it's a prosperity gospel. And this is the real gospel when you look at a story like this and you really pull some pieces out. And here is exactly where we left him. He is in a pit, so it came to pass when Joseph had come to his brothers that they stripped him. And remember that word I said last week? In Hebrew, it literally is a picture of somebody that is like tearing an animal, like skinning an animal. That's the anger and the resentment they have, his brothers have, with him because of these dreams and the way he has talked about it. So this has been building up. He is the 11th of 12 boys to their father Jacob, and he is the favored son. And Jacob's wife Rachel is the wife that he loved, and Joseph is an extension of that love. And his brothers hate the fact that he has the Gucci coat and they have the Macy's coat, right? They don't really like that, and he wears it and he kind of strutted around and he's showing off his stuff and he wants everybody to see that, and that doesn't really go over well. And here we are in a pit, and they rip off the cherished, prized robe and all of Joseph's dreams. They look like they're not going to come to pass, that things aren't really going to come to fruition. And I want us to see this here today. I made a little chart here. I'm not going to read through this, but these were the dreams, right? I want you to see on my left-hand side, these are the dreams that we looked at in the first week. When you look at the beginning of his story, when he talks about this and he's telling his brothers and he sees these things and the dream is from God. But then I want us to see on the other side, I want you to see what Joseph's reality is in the story, that there is a dream, but this is the reality of the situation in which he's going to experience. He's going to experience what we started to see last week and will continue today, betrayal by his brothers. You're going to see today that he's going to be abandoned by his brothers. Because I don't see any of that in the dream. It didn't look that way. Did you ever have a dream or a vision or something from God that looked really good in the distance, but then when you got up close to it, it doesn't look anything like you thought it would? Yeah. Okay. How about number 3? Slavery. I don't see that in the dream either, but that's going to be reality. How about entrapment? How about imprisonment? This story has everything that you would want to see. This is the reality of what he's going to see, and God is going to use the detours not to destroy Joseph, but to develop Joseph. And we have to see that in our own lives. When we go through situations and things that we really don't like, God is using those things to develop us. But here's the picture, too, that I want us to see. And this may be hard with a microphone, but whatever. I'm going to use this for the rest of the sermon. Joseph had a list of the way life was supposed to go. Joey, is that all right? I mean, for typing's sake and fitting things, can we just call him Joey? Is that all right? That's what we call affectionately. That's what we call my dad, Joey, right? So here's Joey. Joey had a list of how life was supposed to go. Do you see that? The way life was supposed to go is that he's the favored son. He's going to inherit things that you weren't supposed to. The law of primogeniture in that day, the firstborn son was supposed to inherit everything. And here is the 11th of the boys is the favored son. It wasn't supposed to work that way, but you see the dreams here and how life is supposed to go. And he winds up in a pit. And guess what? His list of the way life is supposed to go, things are going to go awry. Joseph, what happened to your list? Do you know what we do sometimes as Christians? Or we all do it. We've done it before. We act like God sometimes is Santa Claus, like we're coming to him with the list of what we want in life. Come on, church. And we go to God and say, this is what I want in terms of a spouse. This is where I want to live. This is the kind of job that I want. This is the kind of income that I want. This is what I want with my kids. These are the schools that I want them to go in. And we have a list of things that we want to do. And then reality comes into play and the list gets ripped apart. Church, can I tell us here today at the outset of this sermon, the most important thing that we can do as Christians is to take our list and just rip them up. To tear up the list of what we think God is supposed to do, because at the end of the day, we really think we know better than God does. We think we know better than God does about what we need for our lives. And a lot of times, I don't know if it's okay on Memorial Day weekend, if you can handle the truth, but when we go to God in prayer, many times we're going to God in prayer so he'll get on the same page as us. God, I need you to get on the same page. We're praying for God to get on our page, and we're really not looking a lot of times for guidance and wisdom. We're looking for him to take our guidance and wisdom and to use that because we know better. I wasn't planning on sharing any of that. I'm just talking freely. I'm just giving you thoughts out of my brain. That wasn't part of what I was going to, but it's true. Maybe not for you, but for the speaker. I've done that before. And here is Joseph, and he has this list. Listen, let's just say it like it is. In this day, in this hour of church history, there will never be a time, I feel, that we're moving into, as we're in the last of the last days, and however you want to take that, just look at the state of the world. You look at how things are happening, there will never be a greater time or people will have more of a proclivity and tendency to be offended at God than they will in this day. Did you hear what I said? You and I will never have more opportunity to be offended at God because we're not getting the things that we want from God, and the things that we have in our list, that those things aren't happening. And Joseph's story kind of shows us that. I mean, we see a guy here that things don't really work out well. How many of you saw the movie? And I'm making this fit today. I don't care. I'm just kind of making it fit. Dead Poets Society, right? Everybody has seen the movie. It's one of my favorite movies. I toyed around with the notion of actually showing the scene, but there's something that could be construed as being a little off. And I know there'll be a religious person or two that would say something to me after I show it, so I said, I'm not showing it, right? The movie's PG-13, but nonetheless, anyway. Robin Williams is a teacher at a prep school. It resonated with me from the time that I saw it because I went to a prep school. I didn't go to an all-boys school, but I understood what it was like to be in this school, right? And all the rules and everything. And what's his name? Robin Williams is the teacher, Mr. Keating, right? And one of my favorite scenes in the movie, the end is great, and there's a lot of scenes people talk about, but one of my favorite is when he comes into the classroom, it's maybe, I don't know, like the second day of class. And he tells the kids, right, again, all boys, and he tells them, all right, let's open up the Pritchard poetry book, right? And the Pritchard book is a book that has been there for years. It is about tradition. And when you're studying poetry, you take out the Pritchard book. And he tells the kids to open it up. And he says to one of the kids, Neil, I want you to read. And then the kid starts reading from the introduction. And you see some of these kids, and they're just like starting to like look around and like, this is so boring. Right? Like my class is going to be at 7:30 in the morning Tuesday, right? I get it as a teacher. You're teaching and you think your lesson's really good and the kids are like this. And then he starts to draw some stuff. How many of you know what this scene I'm talking about? He's drawing like a graph on the board and there's the one kid that's writing everything down, right? And then he says to them, what is this? And I'm paraphrasing, okay? I'm not giving you exactly what he says, but you'll get the point. And he says, how ridiculous is this? I want you to rip out the first page. And the kids are like, again, rules, tradition, rip it out, I don't hear enough ripping. And then they start to rip out the pages. And then these are boys, right? But this is in a prep school. And they're ripping. Then he says, don't just rip out the first page, rip out the whole introduction. And the kids are ripping out the pages. And another teacher comes in, and he doesn't know that there's another educator in the room. And he goes, oh my gosh, Mr. Keating, I'm so sorry. And there is the teacher, though, Keating, and he's trying to teach them a lesson. And he's saying poetry is not this, what you thought it was going to be. Rip that out about what your expectations are. And that's why I'm saying to us as Christ followers, you have a list of how life is supposed to go. And God is saying through the story of Joseph to us to rip up the list, to tear it to pieces, because it's not going to work out the way that you thought it would. That's the reality of the situation. It's not going to work out the way that you want it to. What are some of the things already that you've experienced that are reality for you that weren't on your list? I heard it years ago. Before your children were born, if you're not a parent, if you were going to have children, what would you erase? And if you had a list of certain events, things with the boyfriend, girlfriend, maybe a sickness, this or that, are there things that you would erase off of the list that you would have for them and what you'd want them to experience? And it's through some of the worst events that your children or us that we experience God. And so let's pick up in the story. Here he is. All right, 25 through 28. Let's get back into this, okay? And then we're going to roll into chapter 39. In chapter 38, if you're a parent, you're going to read with your children on your own. And you're going to have some awkward moments. I'm not going to have those moments with you. Do you remember last week we said, here is Joseph. They rip off the robe, they take it, and they throw him in a pit, and they're eating a meal. Somebody went to Chick-fil-A. They came back with some food. These guys are sitting here, and I showed you the verse last week where it says that they heard him but didn't listen to his cries. He is in a dark, lifeless, dry pit, a place he never thought he would be, and he's crying out for his brothers to take him out. They're eating. They don't really care. But I love this as the text goes on here. We stopped at 25, at the end of 25, that in 26, one of the brothers, Judah, said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. I mean, there is so much in the Ishmaelites and who Ishmael is, but we're not going to get into that because I'd really put you to sleep. And not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, and again, remember last week, so they just happened to be coming by at the time that his brothers throw him into the pit. These things just happen, right? He just happens to be in Dothan. They're in Dothan. Come on. The Midian merchants come by. His brothers pull Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. Only 20 shekels. That's it. They sell him for 20 shekels of silver. And the rest of the story is history. He is betrayed. Imagine what that would be like, right? If you're Joseph, aren't you thinking your brothers are like, all right, guys, I'm sorry, right? Thank you so much for pulling me back up. I promise I will never strut around again with the robe. Right? You're thinking that probably if they're pulling you out, right? Come on, read the story. And they pull him up, and it's like, no, dude, you're not going back with us to go see Dad. We're selling you into slavery. You have to see this. The animosity, the resentment that has been building up for such a long period of time. And then him to look at his brothers like, I can't believe this is what you're really doing. He's probably shackled. The Ishmaelites, they're not going to care. They're getting money for this. He looks like and the Bible tells us in a little bit how handsome Joseph is. Joseph's a good-looking guy. Bible only says it 4 times, and he's one of the examples that the Bible talks about of people that were beautiful in form. Joseph is a stud, right? So here he is. He is betrayed by his brothers. Can we talk about betrayal and how if you've lived for any period of time, you've been betrayed by somebody, right? I would think somewhere along the lines of time, somebody you trusted, somebody you put faith in, betrayed you. Well, this story shows me God is saying to us through the life of Joseph, betrayal was not meant, Joseph, to break you. Betrayal was meant to take you to the next destination that I have for you. Do you see how we don't look at it that way? We look at betrayal and go, I can't believe this is what they did to me, when God the whole time is saying, you have to be betrayed here, you have to be sold a slave, and you have to be ultimately entrapped by Potiphar's wife. We'll get to that in a second. You have to be put in prison. All this has to happen so you can become the prince of Egypt. If you are not betrayed by your brothers, then so many people are going to die. This has to happen. And how we look at betrayal, sometimes God is using it. And here's another question I had reading this text so much. Do you think Joseph, what would it have taken for Joseph to leave his home of comfort, ease, and security? What would it have taken? You look at the story. Why would he have left? He is his father's favorite son. There's no reason under the sun for him to leave his dad and leave home. God is saying, Joseph, I have to do this to you and to teach you and to grow you. I don't care about your preferences. I care about the purpose that I have for you in your life. Take your preferences and put them aside. You may be doing well in a small space, but I need to do this now and for you to be betrayed so I can take you to a much bigger space and you can help rule and my purposes can be unfolding in your life and in the life of your family, which you are ultimately going to save, and in the life of people that don't even know me in Egypt. And all that has to happen. So Joe, leave your comfort zone. You are way too comfortable. And then here we are. Let's go to chapter 39. We finally made it out of chapter 37. 3 weeks in. And here it is. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. He is 17 years old again. Remember that. And Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had been who took him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Now, there's so much here. Oh, gosh. You look at the situation here, and there is favor in the midst of all the failure. There's favor here because, look, it says at the beginning, and you're going to see at the end of the chapter, the writer wants us to know Joseph was just thrown in a pit. Now he's in slavery. He's enslaved, but the Lord is with him. So in the midst of all the terrible situations, I'm sick of hearing people say, why did this happen to me? I hear way too many Christians asking questions, why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to my loved one? Hey, listen, I can talk from experience. I don't have to tell you everything in my life, but listen, I've dealt with enough to know that when we ask those questions time and time again, it makes me wonder, why are we excluded from any pain? Why are we excluded from any hardship? His love is compatible with the worst pain and the worst situations and circumstances that we will endure this side of the glass. But we don't want to hear that. No one claps for that. No one wants to hear that. It doesn't really make me feel good. I will take God in a bad situation any day of the week than know God in a good situation. Because that's how so many Christians live their lives. We live our lives when things, come on, be honest, when things are really good. God is not a present help, and we don't really need him, and I can kind of handle all these situations. But when something happens, when it hits the fan, and I told you last week, pit happens, and when things happen in life, then you look to God. Come on, right? That's what we do. That's what all of us do. How about Potiphar? You've heard, listen, I know all of us, you've heard so many sermons. I'm trying to draw things out that you probably haven't heard before. I'm drawing things out that I haven't heard. I'm learning. I'm in the story. I'm loving it. And again, yeah, I don't care if you don't like it. I really don't. Because I like it a lot. No, they're a series. No, they're a series that I'll preach it. I don't, because I'm just loving it for my own. I'm preaching to myself. I have to listen to this myself and kind of live this out. No, I'm just setting myself straight. I don't need to set you straight. I can't set my 8-year-old straight. How am I going to set you straight? I got you. You need. So here is Potiphar. You know what it means when it says captain of the guard? What do you think that means? Can we just be a little more interactive? Is that all right? What do you think that means? He's captain of the guard. What do you take that to mean? He's what? I can't, louder. Head honcho of what? The guards. What do you mean the guards? He's a drill sergeant. Chris, thank you. So he's like a drill sergeant. If you saw the movie, and one of the greatest drill sergeant scenes, and it's not a Christian scene, is from, what's the movie again? Private Pile. What was that movie? Full Metal Jacket. Probably one of the greatest scenes, right, in Hollywood history. And that guy was a real drill sergeant, by the way. I don't want to get in trouble. Let me step out of that. Let me extricate myself out of that. But anyway, that's what I thought of. I was waiting for somebody to say that, drill sergeant. How about this? Ready? What this word means in Hebrew, he is the head of the entire military in Egypt. The most powerful military in the world at that time. So he is the commander-in-chief of the entire military. He is not just some guy that's a drill sergeant that's kind of cool and he's got some power. No, he is the head honcho. He talks to the Pharaoh. Everybody knows who Potiphar is. Potiphar buys him, takes him, and the Lord is with Joseph. And he was a successful man. And here is Joseph serving, ready, in a sucky situation. Can I say that, sucky? It's not a word, right? But it's true. Alliteration. He serves in a situation that is not pleasing. He didn't ask to be in this situation. He didn't ask to be in this season. But here he is as an enslaved man. He had this dream, but where he is does not look anything like the dream. He never dreamed of being in an Egyptian house with the commander-in-chief, but here he is, and he chooses to serve, and not only serve, but to serve really well where he gets the attention of everybody that's there. How many of you in here today are in a job or a situation that you hate and your attitude is sucky? Your attitude is not very good and it's not very Christ-like for other people that see you. Do not raise your hands right now. But come on, right? In this situation, I love it. I love the banter. I love it. But how many of us, come on, you're in a situation at a job that you hate, right? Really, you hate your job. You don't like it. You feel like God has something else. What if God is saying to you, no, you need to serve in this season and this situation that you didn't ask for before I can ever elevate you? What if you need to go in with a better attitude on Tuesday morning, because tomorrow we're off, hopefully you're off, to go in with a better attitude and to say, Lord, I want to be more Christ-like. I want to be a light. I want people to see that, Lord. I want you to be glorified through my actions. I may not love it where I am, but I'm going to be faithful, and I'm going to serve, and I'm going to try to make a difference. What if we did that? I know it's not where you dreamed of. Joseph didn't dream of being here, but this is where he is. And then look, 3 through 6. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight. There it is again. He's got favor. He's got favor. Do you know that you have favor in the Lord's sight? Do you know as a child of God that you have favor? When you go to work, that you have favor? When you're in conversations with people that don't know Christ, you have favor. We don't live like we have favor. Okay. But you do. But you do. Where am I? Then he made him overseer of his house. Who do you let in your house? Do you let just anybody in your house? Come on. You don't just let anybody. He takes this enslaved man and he moves him and says, I want this Joey guy to be in my house because of the decisions that he makes, and I see that there is something different on him. I see that God is with him. He doesn't fully understand this, but he sees that something is different. Just like the people that we work with should see something, I would think. And then and then 6, thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. All the guy cared about was, all he thought about was, what am I going to eat tonight? I want steak tonight. I want fish. I want gluten-free bread. I want this. What do I want for dessert? That's all the guy thinks about. Look what the text is saying. That's all he really cares about. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. Muhammad, did you ever think I'd quote Muhammad in a sermon before? Muhammad, the founder of Islam, said when God was apportioning beauty, he gave half of it to Joseph. It's a lot. I'm not saying the Quran. Don't come up to me after, right? I'm just telling you what Muhammad said, all right? I just thought that was kind of interesting. Joseph he's getting everybody's attention. Of course, he's going to get Potiphar's wife's attention, right? But everybody sees him. Everybody notices this guy. Now I need to stop and talk to maybe some of the younger people in the room. You know what I'm going to talk about? I need to talk about the fact, let me use C.S. Lewis. I'll do it this way. C.S. Lewis said, imagine that you go into a bookstore and you see a book. Ready? The title of the book. You ready for the title of the book? You ready? Younger people, you ready for the title? The man or woman God uses. Did you get it? The man or woman God uses. What do you think of? What do they do what does that person do? Tell me, what does that person do? He preaches. Yeah, what else could that person do? He or she? Missionary. I love it. Yes. Prophet. Anything else? You know where I'm going, right? You know where I'm going? You know where I'm taking this? That's the way that we've been trained in the culture in which we live in. That is the wrong answer. Those things are great. But why have we told everybody that if you have a great voice, you need to sing in church? You're a great speaker, you need to be a preacher, a teacher, whatever. You're a great administrator, you have to do that in the church. The text here tells us that Joseph was a great businessman. He knew how to invest like Warren Buffett. And there he is, Potiphar, watching how this guy, come on, think about it. He's doing amazing things, investing, making money, and this guy's going, who is this Joey character? He's making me a lot of money. I like him. He did not have to go to his missionary field was in Potiphar's house. You younger people, God needs people out in the world. He needs people in hospitals. He needs people in schools. He needs people in the law field. He needs people in the business world. He doesn't just need people in churches to sing and to preach. He wants to change the world through us when we get out there and rub shoulders with people that don't know anything about the gospel. The Bible preaches itself. He starts out as a businessman. God says, I've given you gifts. You understand business. There are some people that are quite prolific, that have done well. You saw, not to embarrass him, but I will. My uncle gets up here and opens the meeting. He's a very successful businessman. God has used him. People thought he should have went in ministry years ago and he would have been a great pastor. But look at how God has used him to be a man of affluence and a man of influence. Please, we have been conditioned. The church has been conditioned. You don't have to serve on a missionary field. You don't have to be a minister to bring the gospel to people. I am a teacher in a high school classroom. I'm bringing the gospel every day. I'm not perfect. I'm not religious. But listen, understand it too. And somebody told me, a good friend told me, you are disguised as a teacher. And I am. I'm disguised. I'm really a teacher. The content of American history and sociology, that's great. I convey that, but that's not really why I'm there. That's the easy stuff. I could get anybody to do that. It's how do you connect to those kids, and how do I bring Christ into a situation? And whatever you're doing, that's just me. And that's why I thought of it years. I'm almost 50 now, and I was always like, man, I just want to do this full time. I don't know, it's a lot, and it is a lot. I got a lot on my plate. But listen, God has now at this point, there's no looking back. I'm going to do this until God says you're done. To keep moving ahead and doing this, I had the idea in my head that I just had to be a preacher. That's how I'd make a difference. I just love this story. Did I tell you that yet? He doesn't look like a slave in this story. You know what he looks like? A boss. He's a boss the way he's walking around. And we've kind of, I think teachers, people that have taught this story, they've done it a disservice for the next part that we're going to look at with Potiphar's wife. Now that I told you what he really is and how about this? You know what it means when it says he's a servant in Potiphar's house? You know what that means, by the way? It would be equivalent to saying he was the COO of everything that was going on in Potiphar's house. He is the chief operating officer. He is not looked at as a slave as time moves on. He went there when he was 17 years old. We know he becomes the prince of Egypt, right? Becomes the vice regent, second in charge when he's 30 years old. There's a gap there. Follow this now. I'm going somewhere. There is a 13-year gap there. Did you ever realize? You probably read the story, because I did. I would read the story and go, how long was he in Potiphar's house? It probably wasn't that long. He was probably in Potiphar's house for almost a decade. So Potiphar's wife has been watching him grow up from the time he is 17 years old. Changes the whole complexion of the story. Because then you look at it, you go, oh, okay, all right. There's a little more history here. There's a little more stuff here. And he faithfully serves. How many times, too? This is something else, and this is just my brain, how I look at this. How many times do you think Joseph sat up at night while he's there in Potiphar's house? And he said, God, this looks nothing, even though your favor has been shown upon me, this looks nothing like the dream that I had. How many times do you think he sat there and did that? When he sat there at night and he's daydreaming, even though he's the CEO of Potiphar's house, doesn't really look that way. And then ultimately, right, he is going to be in charge and use his administrative skills to run a massive hunger relief program to save pretty much almost the entire world, right, at that point, or much of it, we could say, the most powerful nation for Egypt. And I love it that God is going to use, and even how he uses his power, when you look at Potiphar's wife, he uses his power, how should I say, Joseph uses his power, but he's not like taken up by the power. You know, and you see people sometimes, they're put in positions of power and it gets to their head. It doesn't get to Joseph's head when you read the story here. Now, it's going to be a different situation when you read, which we're going to get to right now, Potiphar's wife. You ready? You ready to go there? It may be a little PG-13. Do I have any youngins in the room? I have to tell you what the text really says. All right? Is that okay? All right. Come on now. You could just switch it for me. I don't know why it's not going to the next slide. I'm going to go through the next couple of verses in there. There, thank you. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. We ended there. And after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph. Now get that again. After a while, he's been there for like a decade. So she has watched this young man who has gained favor in the sight of Potiphar. he's been moving up and moving up. This is my interpretation. She noticed that there was a really good-looking young man that was brought into the house. And even I could, do I say this? All right, I'll just tell you. If there are younger people, you can go talk to your parents about this later on. The translation of when you look at Potiphar, he was probably a eunuch, all right? Which means that he was castrated, and then the rest you got to talk about. I can't get into it, but that's why some scholars believe that there was a possibility that she was looking elsewhere and that he was very preoccupied with his business ventures and other stuff. And I'm not getting, in the culture of that day, that's what would happen. All right, so that was there. All right, and after a while, his master's wife took notice of him. Come to bed with me. Now, that is not a good translation of what she's really saying. This is a command that she is saying to him. You know what she's really saying? Can I give you the real translation? She is saying, sex now. That's literally what she's saying. That's literally what the text is saying. Come now. She is not asking. Notice how she is trying to use her power as the wife. Now, she is probably a good-looking woman, too. We don't talk about it enough in church. We never touch these kinds of topics, and people get weirded out by it. This is in the Bible, all right? This is really what's happening here in the story. So she is saying that to him. She is saying sex now. That's what she wants, but this is more than sex. This is more about power. At the end of the day, that's what this story is really about. That's what's really happening here. It's happening in the full chapter. Now that you got that, can I read you the last 10 verses here? Can I go 10 through 20? Can I go ahead now? You with me? All right, I'm just enjoying teaching this. So it was as she spoke to Joseph day by day. Look at that, day by day. Don't you notice how the enemy comes at us? Day after day after day after day. And he keeps attacking us. He is relentless. He is seeking to steal, kill, and destroy and devour who we are. So one day, he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants were inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, come to bed with me. I told you what she's really saying. But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. And so it was. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, she called to the men of the house and spoke to them, saying, see, he has brought into us a Hebrew. She goes after Potiphar, right? To mock us. He came into me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice, you're a liar! And it happened when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled and went outside. So she kept his garment with her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, the Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came into me to mock me. So it happened as I lifted my voice and cried out that he left his garment with me and fled outside. So it was when his master heard the words which his wife spoke to him, saying, your servant did to me after this manner, that his anger was aroused. Then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the prison. All right. What do you notice that's weird about the punishment? You're Potiphar. You're the commander-in-chief of the entire military. What do you notice is bizarre? What would you do, John? You kill him. An eye for an eye, hammer up, you're taking him out, done, we're taking him out. What, are you kidding me? Why doesn't Potiphar execute Joseph? Because this is an offense that would have been justified if he did. My take on it is because he knew what really happened. He knew what happened. He knew probably what his wife was like. Had to have known this, but to save face with the people that are in his house and who he was, the only thing he could do, he doesn't want to kill him because he sees how much money he has made him. He sees how important he is. He sees how gifted and talented he is. So he says, all right, let's put him out. Let's just put him in the prison. Put him in the prison. Let's just leave him down there for a little while. Now to the best part. All right, what I think is really the best part is how he resists. And I should even say this. Do you notice again what happened earlier in the story with his brothers? What did they do with the robe? They ripped the robe off of him. here she is. Listen, the author is a genius in his artistry, how he's painting a picture. Here is Joseph again, and his robe gets ripped. And there is a piece of it because I want to show us this in this sermon, because Joseph, things were going real well for you, and you had all these things on your list, but now your list is getting ripped up again, and what you thought was going to happen, you were put in a place of prominence, but now you're going to prison. And how often does that happen to us with our lists and what we think is supposed to happen? How does he resist, saints? Can we talk about temptation? Can we talk about it really, what the gospel is all about, and not what you hear a lot of times about how to fight temptation? Because the Buddhists, right, the ancient Greeks, secular psychologists, do you know how they tell you to fight temptation? Because look what Joseph does. He runs. I'm out. I'm out. He takes off. But how do those groups, how does the world tell us to fight temptation? I'll tell you. It tells you to suppress your desires. It tells you to defeat temptation by willpower. That's how you defeat things. And I'm not just talking about sex. I'm talking about any temptation that is there. That is exactly what the world tells us to do, is to fight them through self-control. But look what Joseph does. Joseph looks outside of himself. He looks to God, where the world tells us, listen, church, the world tells us to fight sin and temptation with willpower. Joseph in this story tells us to fight temptation with heart power. Heart power meaning look outside of yourself. Joseph, he looked to God. He didn't look inside of himself and said, I can fight this. I can beat this on my own. And that's how many Christians are living the Christian life. That is not the gospel. You realize there is another life that lives inside of you, that enables you, that gives you the heart power for you to see that something is true and glorious and supremely more pleasing, and that is the life of Jesus Christ. There is an existential, regular reality, and that is Jesus. It reminds me of my favorite picture of this. Anybody you like Greek mythology? Greek mythology? No, nobody does. Okay, we were talking about Greek mythology the other day. And I've used this example before, but it bears repeating because it fits so well into this story. How we fight temptation. Jason and the Argonauts. Remember Jason and the Argonauts? These movies are classics. Jason had to, and I'm going to give you two instances, right? They're going to go through the same thing. The sirens. And the sirens were like these half-woman, half-bird creatures. And they would lure in fishermen, right? This is how they would tempt them, with their melodious music. And it was so beautiful. And they would play the music, and the sailors would be drawn in and captivated by it. And then when it was too late, they would see the sirens for who they really were, these ugly creatures. Now, Jason knows he's going to go past the sirens. How does he try to defeat the sirens? He puts wax in his ears so he can't hear the music of the sirens. He goes past, and it's, don't listen, just suppress it. You don't want to hear the sound of what is over there. That's how he gets past. Now, number two, how many of you know the Odyssey? Homer, oh gosh, one of the greatest stories ever, right? Odysseus knows he has to go past the sirens. How is he going to deal with them? He knows what's going to happen. Whereas Jason takes the wax and puts it in his ears, Odysseus says, I want all of my men to play the most beautiful music that they can create. And as he goes past, they play music that is more beautiful than the music that is over there coming from the sirens. And maybe you didn't get it yet, but that's what the gospel is. And you fight sin by taking a pleasure and fighting it with a superior pleasure. And that is Jesus Christ. You look outside of yourself. God, it's just one of the best illustrations I've ever heard. Because so much of the church, so many in the church, are telling people to fight it by willpower and just stay away and just do what Joseph did. He ran away. No, Joseph looked out. He did run away, yes, but he looked outside of himself. Our hearts are idol factories, John Calvin said. How do you fight idolatry? How do you fight these other things? You find another pleasure that is greater than that. God, this story is good. Can I go on a little bit? Even if you don't want to. What time is it? I got to finish this part. Yeah, I got to hurry up. All right. Yeah, that was very tepid. None of you want me to finish, but I am. Nonetheless, I am. I think the other temptation in here, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think it bears repeating. The greater temptation, I think, in the story is the temptation to despair. Now, what do I mean by that? Joseph is here. He was a spoiled brat, right, earlier in the story. He deserves to be in the pit. You heard me, right? He deserved to be in the pit. If I was one of his brothers, I would have beat him up too. I would have ripped that robe right off him. Boy, I'm taking that robe right off you, the way you've been treating us, right? Now he is in Potiphar's house, and he is doing everything right. Where does that land him? It lands him in a prison. So my question to you is, what do you do when you think you're doing everything right and life still doesn't come out in your favor? That is the greater temptation I see in this story. For us to despair and get despondent and depressed when life doesn't go our way and we're following all of the quote-unquote rules. I go to church. I'm a good husband. I'm a good wife. I'm a good mom. I'm a good dad. I go to Bible study. I do what I'm supposed to do. How come this is happening to me? And so many Christians in this day and hour, I know this is a word for the church because this is what's going to happen more and more. You're going to see so many people that continue to get offended at God because life isn't going the way they want to and they're doing all of the right things. Church, grab this. It's so important for us to grab this. This is what's happening here. This is the perspective that we need in the story. And then I'll draw this to a close. When you look at compare this now, you look at the end of the chapter, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. What are we seeing over and over again? Wherever Joseph is, he's in the house of Potiphar, he has favor. He's now in a prison, a place that he never thought he was going to be, and he has favor. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. Now remember, how did the chapter start? It starts with God's favor being on his life. The chapter ends with God's favor being on his life, and he's in a prison now. It doesn't make sense. It's counterintuitive, but you're in a prison. And God says, no, I'm with you wherever you go. Whatever you do, whatever circumstances, whatever happens. Now I think as we close, it's appropriate to talk about the ultimate Joseph, the one who lived a perfect life, the one who lived a great life, the one who resisted, as we came to the table this morning, the one who resisted all temptation but did not sin, Jesus Christ. Do you know Joseph is a type of Christ? He is pointing to Jesus Christ. And I think of Jesus Christ, who was ultimately in the Garden of Gethsemane. And what does he say as he's suffering from hematidrosis? He is sweating drops of blood. And he asks the Father, he says, Father, is there any way that I could be spared? I don't want to drink the cup. And then it's ultimately not my will, but your will be done. Saints, how many of us in here are willing to rip up our list of how we think life is supposed to be, how life is supposed to go, what circumstances we're supposed to face, what's supposed to happen with our kids, what's supposed to happen with our job, what's supposed to happen with our health, what's supposed to happen when we retire, what's supposed to happen. And God says, will you just trust me and rip up the list? Saints, that's what we need to do. Lord, as we come and close this meeting today, Father, I ask that we as a people, Lord, we would be ripping up our lists of our expectations, of what we think, of what we know in our mind, of how things are supposed to ultimately go. Lord, I thank you that as we travel in this amazing story, and we're getting so much out of it, Lord, I ask that we would just continue to see you, Lord, in the center of everything that's taking place. And even when life doesn't go the way that we expect, even when life doesn't go the way that we plan, and there are detours along the way, that we know that you are still with us and your face shines upon us. Amen. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of this Memorial Day weekend. I would put before us too, read the story. Go in, jump into the Bible. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to bite. Go in and actually read this story. Become acquainted with the character as we continue to traverse and see everything that is going to be laid out in his life. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.